Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Carolina Gutierrez. She's a business unicorn, founder, serial entrepreneur, mental health advocate, and podcast host and counselor. Welcome to the show, Carolina.
Thanks for having me, AJ.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Carolina. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we'll be talking about. We'll talk about unlocking intuitive power for purpose driven entrepreneurs. But before coming to other entrepreneurs, let's understand your journey so that people know who they are listening to.
Well, how do I start? Let's see. Just like I'm sure lots of the entrepreneurs here that are listening, I started my journey very early. My first business was when I was 12 years old, never thinking I was going to be an entrepreneur, but just kind of falling into it. And it's a passion that has just grown. I've started and developed several businesses throughout my journey. And I'm here to be an evangelist for the importance of mental health and really of listening to yourself on this journey and not losing yourself.
Absolutely. So now I want to understand means business and intuition. When you talk about business, some people say it's a hardcore business. Let's look at it pure from a business sense of view. Intuition is something much more internal. So I want to understand this intuition business based business strategies. How do they work with business in the real world?
Well, it's maybe not as a model for every entrepreneur out there, but for the purpose-driven ones where meaning and really having a goal in regards to changing this world that we live in, I think it definitely walks side by side with them. I like to call it business enlightened. I like to call it or look at it as approaching business from the inside out. I believe that intuition is one of the main pillars when it comes to taking care of our mental health, being able to listen to that internal dialogue. And it naturally translates, at least for me and for other purpose-driven entrepreneurs, into business. Because as much as there's traditional business wisdom, and don't get me wrong, I know, profit and loss and monitoring all those stats are important. And it doesn't mean that has to go away. But if you lead with your intuition and then back up with those traditional business principles, you can create a very winning combination there for yourself that contributes not only to the world, but doesn't alienate you from you and your family. Because the reality is entrepreneurship can be detrimental to our mental health.
Right, Carolina. So who are these purpose-driven entrepreneurs? Are there, do they stay in special places? Or is it that they are among us, but we are not able to understand who they are? Or they put a board outside that I am a purpose-driven entrepreneur. As a simple person, how do I know this is a purpose-driven entrepreneur and that he or she deals through, intuitive business strategies?
Yeah. I think that there's a couple of kind of indicators that you can look at, right? How is it that they do business? How is it that they choose to treat their employees? Are they paying their employees a living wage? Let's start right there, right? And so it's really recognizing that business isn't just something about numbers and your bottom line at the end of the day, right? It's a matter of how we show up in the world, how we treat the people around us, and how we treat the world around us as well.
Absolutely.
And it's not just, sorry, AJ, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, carry on.
Not just a matter of just saying it, but actually living those principles and seeing how they show up in the world.
Yeah. So how does it actually work on the ground? Means first you are an entrepreneur. That time you want to scale up, you want to make profit so that your business keeps on running. Or is it that from the very beginning you make it purpose driven and then so intuition comes first or entrepreneurship comes first?
That's a great question, actually. I think that intuition is what drives entrepreneurship. I think that intuition is that area inside of you that is kind of niggling at you saying, there's something here that I can fix. This is something that I can maybe do better, right? Because the reality is that you, as somebody who caters to entrepreneurs, you know that most businesses fail, right? And so we have to be, as entrepreneurs, we have to be so convinced that we are not going to fail, that we're going to beat those astronomical odds to actually make this work, that I definitely believe that there's this intuitive drive within us saying, you can do it better and you can do it by yourself. And I always say those are the two illnesses that you got to suffer from as an entrepreneur, but then you got to get help for them as soon as you become an entrepreneur because they're just not realistic. But it is that type of delusion almost. When somebody looks at it from the outside, it might appear as delusion. When you ask an entrepreneur, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? They're like, there's just something in me that's saying that I can do this, right? So I think that definitely intuition is that initial seed of entrepreneurship that then grows.
Right, right, Carolina. So, in terms of intuition-led strategies, is it good only for the heart, or is it also good for the business? How should entrepreneurs look at it from the outside?
Well, I think it depends on how you see business. Is business only a numbers game? Is it only part of the bottom line? Or is it the people that surround you and that help you grow that business? Because you can be a brilliant strategist, you can have these great ideas, but if you don't have the people that support you working behind you, having that dream build and grow, then you just have an idea, right? And I think that really it's looking at the importance of your people and how that, how you treat them at the end of the day. You hear a lot of these horror stories of businesses that do great numbers, but they have super high turnover. You have these horror stories of these employees that leave and say never again. This is, we were treated under being considered a human. So I think that, there's a lot of different ways to look at business, and a purpose driven entrepreneur probably isn't going to be just looking at the bottom of the line. Don't get me wrong. I like money. I like making money. I think we all do here. That's why we're in this game, but not at any cost, at least not for me.
Right, right, Carolina. So, how does a purpose-driven entrepreneurship work look like? Means, is there a particular perfect picture that you can show that this is a purpose-driven place from the
No, I
inside?
don't. I wish I could give you, like a little checklist for you to be able to identify them off the top. But no, I would say that it's something that, I think a lot of people give lip service to. But then when you actually see those businesses in action, then you have a different idea of what that looks like, right?
Right.
And I also think
So,
it's a very personal thing too, right? Not all purpose-driven entrepreneurs are titans of industry. It could be small businesses that, if let's say they choose to feed the homeless every once in a while. So somebody that's hungry and that they're running a restaurant and they're like, if you're hungry, come in and we'll give you something, right? That to me is a purpose-driven entrepreneur. So I think it really depends on the level of where you're looking at entrepreneurship as well.
right. So, can it be that some people only look at purpose-driven entrepreneurship and there they use their intuition, or is it also that it is by nature they are themselves and they are leading an intuition led life? How does that look like? Does it work like that?
I think the reality is that, intuition is one of the single most, or it's the single, one of the single things that we as human beings share on this planet. Whether you believe in purpose driven entrepreneurship or whether you don't, we all have intuition. We all have that internal guidance, right? And it's a matter of whether you choose to listen to that or not. I think that people that aren't purpose driven entrepreneurs listen to it as well, right? But it's a matter of marrying that and seeing, like, am I going to lead with this, or is it these traditional business principles that are going to actually step forward instead of, is this the right thing to do or not?
Right, right, Carolina. I'm very much here, except that there is some technical issue. So I've gone on audio, but I can see you, the audience. You are the master for
I'm
today. So I'm That is the more important thing, that they are able to see. As for
Okay.
me, for my one, I will be heard. So the questions will be there. So in terms of this intuition based life, that is, how can one look at, you are a counselor, so I want to understand also, what do people come to you for? How do you counsel them? And if you tell someone that, okay, this is the way you can lead an intuition based life, what is the best way to get started with that?
Well, I think that whether you lead an intuition based life as an entrepreneur or not, I think that the reality is leading in it. Oh, there you are. Welcome back. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
I think the reality is that when you lead an intuition based life, you're recognizing that we all carry an innate wisdom within us, and we are trusting that innate wisdom, even when logically it might not make sense in the moment, right? People come to me for a variety of different issues. But as a counselor, part of my guiding principle is making sure that you are being able to listen to that voice, because that voice is really the expert, I find, in our lives. Whether we can quantify it, label it, put it in a box and say, this is what it is. No, I don't think we're there yet. And maybe we might never be there. Maybe that's part of that magic that makes up the human experience. But the reality is that we all have that guiding voice. Now, sometimes they don't meet up, right? My guiding voice might not be saying the same as yours, AJ, but they still are out and taking care of us, that voice, that internal guidance. So I find it to be a crucial and critical pillar of mental wellness in someone's life, and especially bringing it back to entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship has such innate difficulties built into it. And mental health is probably the last thing that an entrepreneur is thinking about as they're building their business. But there are really staggering statistics in regards to how poorly we do as entrepreneurs with our own mental health. So, for example, the United Nations classifies out of their 8 factors for suicide, entrepreneurship carries 5 or 6 of those innate factors built into it, right? Entrepreneurs are 4 times more likely, 4 times more likely. I repeat that 4 times so that everybody makes it really clear, more likely to take their own life than the general population, right? 60% based on a study here in Canada by CAMH, 60% or more of entrepreneurs report feeling depressed more than 1 time a week, right? So these numbers are very, very scary, actually, because we look at entrepreneurs as the modern day superheroes. I say that all the time, right? In tough economic times, in situations of war or catastrophe, these industries are stepping up. These entrepreneurs that lead these big companies are stepping up and saying, "Hey, we'll help. We have the resources. We have the ability to facilitate whatever it is that's needed at the time."
Right.
These are the ones that are also at highest risk, right? So, and it's a conversation that simply is not being had. It's starting to slightly, but it's still not being had to the extent that it should be in these circles. The same way that we're looking at how are we increasing our profits, how are we increasing our market share, we should be having the conversation of how are we increasing mental wellness and building it in to a successful business model.
Right, Carolina. So, in terms of usually purpose-driven entrepreneurs, this mental health issue, wellness, is the problem less or more because they are thinking good about everyone, and they are doing some good work for the society, so they may feel good, and the mental health issues will be less? Or is it the other way around, because they worry about the world more, their issues can become, they
I'm
become
gonna
much,
say
they feel that pain more?
that's a good point to make. I'm gonna say it's probably the same because the risk factors are still there, even though you're approaching it from a stance of looking beyond those numbers. The risk factors are still there. Crazy work hours, right? You as an entrepreneur, you don't go through this process yourself. You drag along those that are closest with you, your family, your children, the employees that are dedicated to working and helping you, right? They also tend to be higher risk takers. So you have higher instances of mental health issues, whether they're diagnosed or undiagnosed. So, for example, neurodivergence, ADHD, autism, dyslexia, high numbers of entrepreneurship in those communities because they don't fit into the regular model. So whether you're looking at it as a purpose-driven entrepreneur or not, the reality is that entrepreneurship, period, affects your mental health, and you need to be getting help for that in a variety of different ways.
Right. So you in a variety of different ways. Can you tell a few of the ways that entrepreneurs can take care of themselves?
Sure. So definitely, I had created a program. It's kind of on pause right now, but I'd created a program that looked at it kind of like the AA model. And so it was a peer support group. That's not available right now, but what I do encourage, an alternative for that, is make sure that you have other entrepreneur friends, at least, right? Because you're being able to discuss the issues that come up in this lifestyle. And I do think entrepreneurship is a lifestyle. It's not just a job, but it's a way of living. And so unless you're speaking to another entrepreneur, they're not going to understand why you're putting yourself through this madness, because it can feel like madness, right? It's like that baby that you're desperately trying to grow and have succeed, and it's causing you to not sleep at night, it's causing you to spend all your money, it's causing you to isolate yourself because you don't, not a lot of people either understand, or you don't have not the money, the time to socialize the way that you normally would. And when you do socialize, people are saying to you, why would you do this to yourself? Right? So it's very important for you to be able to have friends or a community around you where you can discuss the actual the realities of entrepreneurship. I think the other thing too is I call it the three-headed monster in business, and it's fear, shame, and secrecy. Right? Those are all things that as entrepreneurs that we practice. No one ever is going to say, oh, I haven't paid my mortgage in 2 months because my suppliers are late. Right? Or I haven't, how's your day going? Great. No, it's actually not going great. Everything is falling apart. The plan that I'd been working for the last 3 months all of a sudden has blown up in my face. And, it's just a constant array of decision making that entrepreneurs have that doesn't always go our way, right? But we're so invested in keeping this poker face because no one wants to do business with somebody that appears to not be doing well, right? And so it's this really kind of almost dark little world that we live in that just makes it really, really toxic. And when you look at the scenarios for people taking their own life, one of the main issues there is people thinking that they don't have options. And when we're painting ourselves into corners, and then we don't, and not having options is a suicide risk factor, then it becomes even a more toxic soup. So definitely speaking about it truthfully. I would also say in recognizing that you need to be able to dedicate your time to a couple of other things, right? Making sure that you have accountability partners. So maybe it might be your partner coming in and saying, hey, we agreed no more than 12 hours a day, right? Come on, let's get out. Let's do something, sit with the family, eat dinner with us at least, items like that. I think the other thing too is recognizing the importance that nature can do to us and the effects that nature has. Maybe it's just going for a walk. I remember when one of the businesses that I originally started, I would spend all my time inside. I would see nobody because I'd be building this alone at home. I didn't have coworkers. I didn't have anyone to speak to. And so I remember thinking, well, how am I going to do this? Because I know this isn't healthy. And so I started arranging one errand a day that would get me out of the house, that would get me away from my computer, away from my desk, speaking to another human being, not about my business. Right. And so there's little things that you can start to do, little kind of uh, maybe like training wheels for yourself. Right. I think definitely getting working with a counselor, right? And with a counselor that understands entrepreneurship, right? You don't just want somebody that's just going to be there and sympathize, but understand why you're putting yourself through this, right? At the end of the day, I sometimes think that we're a bit of gluttons for punishment in this, but the rewards can be so high that you want to do it right? You don't want to sacrifice yourself in that process.
Absolutely. You gave some good ideas, a lot of understanding about this, Carolina. And so there is a lot to learn from you. And there is also a lot to learn from your podcast. You are a podcast host. So tell us a bit about your podcast so that people can learn from it.
Thanks, AJ. So it's on hold. We're developing season 2 over the next coming months, but it's all about intuition and how the first season is about intuition and how intuition shows up in your life. My goal is to really equip people to develop that because it's a muscle, right? And just like that muscle introduces you to your business, that muscle can also guide your business and your life. And so it's the first season is all about stories of intuition in people's lives and how it showed up for them, how it's saved them in certain scenarios, and how they've learned to listen to it better. Because I know that many people have a story out there of when they didn't listen to their intuition. They're like, I knew it, I should have followed it. So if I can help kind of create the idea that the more you listen to it, the better your life gets, that's really the goal of that podcast.
Wonderful. And for those people who would like to learn more from you, about you, get your services, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Sure. You can find me. It's called, my website is curandera.ca, curandera.ca. And yeah, you'll be able to see what's up when it comes to media, podcast, speaking engagements, as well as my services.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thanks, AJ.